Welcome to a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Bates and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest, up-and-coming TV director, Ren Bell.
My brother Frankie. How you doing, pal?
Good. How the fuck are you?
I'm doing pretty damn good.
Hey, what?
I'm just moving
What
a
do
little bit.
you fucking?
I moved it a little bit because he doesn't want. He wants when he's talking to the mic. I like to look at who I'm talking to. What?
I thought we...
What now?
Nothing. Go ahead.
You got to look at who you're talking to, right?
Yeah, you do. Well, why don't you tell me a fireman story? Well, tell me a fireman story about your pal Blinky.
My pal Blinky. Well, I'll tell you one. I got a million Blinky stories because we were like real close friends, you know. But I'll give you one. We were both sick fucking gamblers, which is why we became bookmakers, because we couldn't stop gambling, right? So I owed everybody. I owed every bookie. I banged on every credit card. So I approached him one day. I said, look, why don't we start taking action? Get on the right side of this. And we did. But we were such sick gamblers. We were making a search one Sunday afternoon. I guess it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
A search and fire?
Yeah. The fire was on the 4th floor. So our job was to go to the 5th floor, team up, force the door, and make a search on the floor above the fire where all the toxic gases are, all the smoke.
Okay.
Because the other 2 guys on the truck will be going in through the front door to put out the fire on the floor below. Anyway, we're on the floor above. He goes left, I go right, searches the bedrooms. I come back to the living room, nothing. I take off my mask. We're about an inch from the ground. Smoke is backed all the way down. I look over at him. I says, you get the bedrooms? He goes, no, I'll get the bedrooms in the closet. You get the kitchen? Cool. Separate again, come back to the living room. Nothing. I says, looks like it's clear. Let's get the hell out of here. He goes, wait a minute. Look, he says, a TV set. He says, maybe we can score the giant game. So now we're like an inch from the fucking bottom. We're putting the giant game out. He's standing up trying to push smoke out of the way out in front of the TV so we get a giant score. A quick Blinky story. I'm at a card game in the back of an Italian pool room, right? And I'm up about $4,000, right? I'm about 25 years old. And Blinky's my partner. He's sitting next to me. I'm up about $4,000, and I got the $4,000 stuck in my sock, right? And I got 700 on the table. It's a high-stake game. And we're playing, and the door burst open. And 2 guys come in with ski masks and shotguns, right? It's a stick in the face. Push all the money in the middle of the felt, right? So I got the 700. We push it to the felt. I'm scared shit. I'm just a kid. Even if I wasn't a kid, I'd be scared shit. But I'm just a kid. I'm scared shit. We push all the money in the middle of the felt. All of a sudden, the guy goes, one of the guys with the shotguns takes it and smacks this fucking guy underneath him, old man in the head. Opens up his fucking head. There's blood all over the felt. His head opens up like a ripe watermelon, right? He says, I ain't fucking around, boys. I want all the money. Now I'm in my sock. I mean, I'm ready to write the guy a check, right? There's money coming out of every fucking orifice, every crevice. Guys are throwing money in the middle of the fucking table. Everybody panics, except for Blinky. Blinky turns around to me. Now, you got to my friend Blinky, he's so honest you can play craps with him over the phone. You know what I mean? That's the kind of guy he is. He's fucking amazing. Anyway, he turns around to me with a big grin and he says, Billy, here's that 1,500 I owe you. I said, no, you fuck. He goes, no. I said, you fucking maggot, no. And I'm cracking up in the middle of a fucking holdup because this guy's breaking my balls. Anyway.
That's a nice story.
True story.
Well, our guest today is Ren Bell, who's a comedy director, up-and-coming comedy director. How are you, Ren?
I'm your least known guest of all time.
No, we've had...
You did the gardener. You talked to the gardener.
We've had lesser known guests than you. We've had lesser known guests than you. So let me tell you how I met Ren. I met Ren.
Tell the truth, though.
I'm going to tell the truth
because there's a lot of confusion about this origin story.
Couldn't make this shit up. So Ren was the dialogue coach on a show with Mayan Bialik called Call Me Cat, and I'll come down on the stage one day, and I see this Dick Van Dyke looking MFer. I just said MFer instead of motherfucker in case your parents are watching.
Oh, they'll watch.
Okay,
they'll watch.
In case your parents are watching. Flitting about the stage with the actors. Flitting. So, of course, I assume he's a friend of Dorothy. You know what that means?
Friend of Dorothy?
Yeah. Think Wizard of Oz.
Light in the loafers?
Think Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Punch from the rough?
I assume he's a friend of Dorothy. So, of course, he's not, as it turns out, he's not. He's married to a gorgeous woman, way out of
my league.
out of his league. But we all are, including you, Derek. So I'm watching this guy and I say, this guy's not for real. I thought he's really an asshole.
First impression.
and overstepping his bounds by quite a bit. So one day, this Dick Van Dyke looking MFer comes in, and I think you were wearing a Dick Van Dyke T-shirt.
Yeah.
Pick up the story from there.
Okay, so I'm gonna back it up and then I'm gonna catch you.
Okay.
Been trying to become a sitcom director forever. Okay, and I've been told that this is the maker or breaker of futures. All right. So from the moment this guy looked at me, I was like, he doesn't like me. I know he doesn't like me. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. Okay, growing up in the South. I know when someone doesn't like me. So I thought, no, he doesn't like me. Well, whatever. All I can do is do my job. So at that point, I'm doing 2 shows at once on the same lot. So I'm actually getting traction as a dialogue coach. I'm working for Warner Brothers for Call Me Cat, and I've been sort of like loaned to Night Court, but it really clicked at Night Court, so I'm on both shows at the same time.
But the first year in Call Me Cat, there was no Night Court.
That's right, but the Dick Van Dyke story takes place in the 2nd year.
Okay.
So I get the phone call to come over for the cast photo of Night Court, the end of the 1st season.
Okay.
I had been the dialogue coach, but I had to go back to Call Me Cat. I couldn't, at this point, the shows overlapped. I had to choose one, and I started at Call Me Cat. I had to go back over there. So I get the call to come over, and I show up, and Frank goes, "What the fuck are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm here for the cast photo, sir." Right? And he goes, "No, you're fucking not. They got a dialogue coach." I said, "Right, but they've asked me." "Who asked you?" Well, Melissa, who's a star of the show, I said she texted me and wanted to know if I wanted to be a part of the. "No, you're not here. You're not going to sit there. You're not going to stand there, and you're not going to give anybody any fucking notes." I said, "Oh, I'm just here for the photo. Look at you. You're dressed like a hobo. With no, you want to be a director. Directors don't dress like that." So keep in mind, it's show night. So on the other show, which we didn't have a live audience, but I still play like it's show night. So for the most part, during the week, I'll wear a vintage tie, that sort of thing. Really keep it classy. On show night, I'll wear a really nice suit jacket and a vintage sitcom T-shirt. Usually something that has some significance to me. That day it was Dick Van Dyke, okay? I was really also trying to give the finger to NBC a little bit because Dick Van Dyke got canceled after only 4 seasons, which I think is still one of the hugest tragedies in sitcom television. So there we are, I'm with Frank. Frank says, "Get off the stage. Get off the stage." "No, you're not." And it becomes heated between the two of us. You're talking to the nicest guy in the room, right? So now
Nobody's ever called me the nicest guy.
Well, fair enough. Frank is red-faced, okay? Frank's face is red. He wants me off the stage. Other people are watching. The network is there. Warner Brothers is there. My producers are there. Some people that have friends on both shows are going, "We don't understand what's happening." But Frank made it very clear to everyone that I shouldn't be there. And he said, "If you think you're going to give a fucking note." And then Melissa Rauch says, "Well, what if I want a fucking note?" And then Frank goes, "No, you're not going to get a note." And she says, "I want you to sit over here next to me." So Frank is angry at this whole, I mean, he's steaming.
I don't recall this at all. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
that's what I'm saying. There's 2 parts.
Let's go ahead.
Right. In any case, I take the picture. It's fine. Frank is gone. The pressure comes down. I walk outside. And there's an amazing casting director who's still the casting director for Night Court, a Jewel Bestrop. And she said, "I love that shirt." And I turned to Frank and I said, "Finally, someone with taste." And Frank says, "You're not a real man. A real man would give this woman his shirt." Okay. So again, nicest guy in the room, this one. But I'm not going to back down from a challenge, right? 4 older brothers, youngest of 5. I go into the bathroom, I pull the shirt off, I give it to her. And this becomes a piece of lore on the Warner Brothers property because I give her the shirt. I said, "I'm so sorry. This thing is filled with sweat." And she says, "It's actually filled with your magic." I turned to Frank. I said, "You see that? Magic Frank. I had my nice button up on. I buttoned it up, and I said, "Shake my hand right here. Let's bury this hatchet, whatever it is." Truth?
No.
I have
Go
the
ahead.
picture. I got the picture.
Go ahead.
Frank, I've got him in the corner now. Frank shakes my hand. He's not happy about it, but he shakes my hand. And at that moment, that was the détente. Everything was cool after that. That's the end of the story. And everyone talks about it. They go, "You're the guy that managed to not get fired by Frank Pace."
Wow.
Whoa, I didn't know you were an axe man. I didn't know you were big
shit.
on that. You were tough,
yeah.
man.
Right.
So I don't quite recall it like that. But I do recall that the moment you gave up your shirt, that's the moment I knew you had what it took to become a director.
That's amazing because
The way you tell the story, you're the hero of the story. And
yeah,
you were not the fucking hero of that story or any other story.
But what about your perspective on this? I mean, that's the two-sided thing. How'd you see this thing going down?
No,
Were you breaking his balls just to break his balls?
Yes, I was breaking his balls just to break his balls. But this was year 2. So first year I was breaking his balls because I didn't like him. Second year, I was testing him because he had shown some signs of potential. Yes. So when I told him to give Jewel his shirt, I fully expected him not to give Jewel his shirt. So when he gave Jewel his shirt and she accepted it, I knew he had what it took.
So pretty much all I got to do to be a director is go topless. That's it. I have what it takes to be a director.
You could be a director if you wanted.
I could be a topless dancer with these tits. I always liked big tits, and now I got it.
Yeah, you got it.
Finally.
Right.
So that's a story, but
That's pretty
again,
cool.
that was the turning point was the Dick Van Dyke T-shirt, giving it to Jewel.
And then I think on one of the nights of Night Court when I was directing, I did wear a Dick Van Dyke. I bought a new one.
Yeah, because he didn't have the old
I
one.
didn't have the old one. Yeah, of course. But that story, Angela and I talk about that all the time because for me, that really was a turning point. And I came home and I have that picture of us shaking hands and I said, "Look, this guy saw me. He really saw me today." And, you know, it's a hard thing to be seen, I think, in any position in Hollywood because there's so much fake out there. And you don't know, and there's a lot of not just fake, but bluffing and blustery on top of fake. So it's hard to gauge.
I do them all. I do bluster. I do bluff. I do everything.
Where are your faces?
They're all in my resume.
It's the same face, but they're all different. Yeah.
So who told you that Frank Pace is the guy who's going to make you or break you?
It's known in Hollywood. This is
This is a Hollywood.
everybody knows this. Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
I don't even think anybody even knows who I am.
Yeah. I don't think
Yeah,
that's
that
true.
shit, make or break it. It's Frank Pace. How about that shit?
So how'd you get interested in comedy?
You know what? I was always interested in it. I grew up down south and I fell in love with television really early. You know, my parents had multiple jobs. My dad worked for the phone company. My mom was a cop and then a private investigator. And they had so many amazing jobs, but they were working and there were 5 of us. And so just like any kid in the 80s, I turned on television. And what I saw was Taxi and Night Court. And I saw these plays, you know, that were at Cheers that really felt like stage plays for a camera. And I just fell in love with it. And so I knew very early on I wanted to be on television or work in television. I thought I wanted to be an actor. So I wanted to create my own plays. I wanted to just be on stage. So I had to write them myself, which was a huge pain in the ass. So I would write these plays and then I would need people to be in them. So I'd cast all the kids in the neighborhood in the play. And then I'd have to direct it because that's the only way any of the kids would do the play. And so as it turned out, I couldn't really act that well. But what I could do was convince older, meaner kids to be in the plays that I had written and directed. And that was...
I could have been in one of his plays.
Yeah, I think you were the star of many of my plays, to be honest.
Older and meaner.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So it was strange because even as a kid, as a 10-year-old kid, I would say, "Hey, I need you to do this line, but when you do it, you're going to cross over here and then turn back and give the punchline over here." I don't know where the language came from. I don't know where I think it chose me, I think is basically how that happened.
Who are your comedic influences?
With Dick Van Dyke, for sure.
Well, you look like him.
Thank you. I'll take that all day long. I look like Woody, the Toy Story character that's brought to life is really what I look like. Mary Tyler Moore to me, because she's so real and funny. Lucille Ball, of course, that's, you can't really top that. But she's coming out of vaudeville, so everything's going to play really big. So if you compare that to Mary Tyler Moore, where everything feels very real, even today, I don't think anyone has touched the realism that Mary Tyler Moore was able to get in that show. So I'm always looking for what's real. I mean, John Larroquette was a huge influence on me as a kid. I watched Night Court all the time. I wanted to be Dan Fielding. That's really how I got my ass kicked in school, was learning how to mouth off, and I learned that from watching mostly him on television.
Yeah.
So comedically, I would say it's a smattering of people, but Billy Wilder, for example, I just think that kind of comedy is fantastic.
And who has influenced you as a director?
As a director, I would say it would be Jim Drake. This is not a person I've met. These are most people who watch sitcoms. They can't really tell the difference of who's directed them, because the format is it's not a static format, but it's not an auteur's format. You don't want Scorsese directing a sitcom; it'll kill you. You don't want Tarantino directing a sitcom. It's too reliant on sort of like directorial authorship. This is about the words and the performances. So I'd say Jim Drake for sure. Terry Hughes for sure. Again, person I never met, did a lot of Golden Girls. Yeah, I mean, talk about 4 people sitting around a couch, never moving, and it is incredibly interesting. They don't have to go anywhere and do anything to make it interesting. They're interesting. The writing is interesting.
The writers, make that interesting, right? I mean,
it's true.
How does a director make conversation interesting?
Mostly by staying out of the way, or by serving it if it needs something. Everybody loves movement these days, which is great. But a director will know when to move them and when not to. It's not brain surgery, sitcom directing. However, a lighter touch is usually better. That being said, comedy directors, for this format, contemporary, Shelley Jensen, I think, just knocked it out of the park over at Fresh Prince. These are huge people. Contemporary directors, I have followed. Don Scardino is the guy that brought me into the business. Scardino is
a great guy. We had him on here.
You had Don?
We had Don.
What?
He was probably our
sweetheart
7th or 8th interview.
Dude, Don is the greatest.
A great guy.
So Don really pulled me out of obscurity and said, "Hey, kid, you're a television director. You should do it."
Well, where'd you meet Don?
Okay, so this is very interesting. So once I came out here for grad school to do experimental theater at Cal Arts. All right, so I came out to get my master's degree, and what it turned out to be was just like rolling around naked in pig's blood, doing the grease. And that's the comedy, was that I thought I was going to come out to LA to, get into an acting program that would put me on television. But really, that trained me to be a stage actor, but one that can let go of any inhibition, and one who can spot when something is holding another actor back. So the training that I got at Cal Arts, I use it literally every day that I'm on set, but it did not turn me into a television actor at all. That being said, I fell right into, I got a commercial agent. I'm out there, I'm busting my ass trying to get a job. I get a nice big Subaru commercial. But then the strike happens. It's 2007, 2008.
Now you get a Subaru commercial as a director, or as
an actor, because that was my training. And so I crashed and burned. The industry was dead, and so I was running out of money. I had $150 left. I was going to have to move back to the South, have to tail between my legs. And I saw an opening for a theater teacher at a private school called Oakwood. It was really a teacher's assistant job that then morphed into an after-school theater program. And then eventually I took over the middle school theater, and then I took over the high school theater, and then I was running the performing arts program at this really high-end school, and all the parents were celebrities, famous directors, writers, actors, everybody. Wow. So now all of a sudden I'm in this mix of really incredible people. Don Scardino was one of them. And so his son, who's still a friend of mine, who's a grown adult living in Japan, he was in one of my plays, and Don came to see the play, and he said, "You're a great director." And I said, "Thanks for coming. Glad you enjoyed the show." He said, "Yeah, have you ever considered doing it professionally?" And I said, "Well, this is sort of where the universe has placed me. I'd love to do something else, but I think this is what my calling is right now." He says, "Okay, great. Well, if you change your mind, A year later, he comes to another one of my plays, and he says, you know, I got to tell you, the staging is brilliant. These kids, they don't seem like kids. They seem like grown-ups. This seems real to me. There's something going on here. I think it's you. You should consider being a director. I said, Don, I love what you're saying, but I don't know how I would make that happen. I couldn't hack it as an actor out there. I don't know anyone in the business, the parents of the students, but I would never ask that. You know, my job was to serve the kids. It wasn't ever to kind of overreach in terms of, hey, can you get me on that set that you're working on so I can get a little eyes on? I would just never do it. Another year goes by. Okay, so he's getting ready to move back to New York. Evan is graduating, and he says, look, kid, do you want to join the circus or not? I just watched this play. This is great. I did 12 Angry Men, which I called 12 because I had a diverse cast, and I did it in the round because I thought it would be amazing for the audience to be able to move around and see this play and for it to cook from every angle. You know, I hadn't quite done that before, and I thought, this is a really tough play to do this on. It has to take place in real time. You know, I don't really get to use dramatic elements to say, 6 hours later. Like, it needed to feel like they were really deliberating, and you could go around the circle and see. And he was just blown away. And he said, look, do you want to join the circus or not? And I said, I do. And I went home and I told my wife, I was like, you know, Don's been telling me for 3 years I should be a TV director. I think she said, 3 years? He offered this to you 2 years ago? Yeah. Well, why didn't you do it? And I said, well, I didn't know if it was right. I didn't know where it was really coming from. She was like, are you an idiot? Just do it. Just do it. So she's really the architect of my career. So I called Don and I said, okay, how do I do it? And he said, you're going to join me at Two Broke Girls for 3 weeks. You're going to shadow me, and I'm going to show you everything I know. So I talked to the headmaster of the school because I was running the program, and I said, look, I need a few weeks off. I'd never ask for time off. That's not the type, right? So I asked for the time off. They give it to me. I go one day at Two Broke Girls, and I thought, this is a stage play. This is the easiest thing in the world, you know? And he said, this is the easiest thing in the world.
Wow.
He said, you know, the major thing is that most people who do this job don't come from theater. He said, most of them don't know the things that you know about performers and what can get stuck in someone's head, or how you get something unstuck from someone's head, or if they feel self-conscious or any of those things. He said, because Don was he was Jesus on Godspell. He got crucified eight nights a week. You know what I mean? Basically. So he said, this is what you're going to do. And then he left town and he said, look, I got you an interview on a show. He said, they're interviewing a lot of people. He said, just be yourself. And so I went and did the interview, and a couple weeks later I heard that I was going to be the dialogue coach on my first show. And I put in 2 years notice at the school. So I was running the program, but also becoming a dialogue coach at the same time, just zipping back and forth across town. And then
What show was that?
it was called All About the Washingtons. It was Rev Run of Run DMC.
Wow.
Yeah. So he didn't really quite get along with the other dialogue coaches that they had sort of sent his way. And so they sent me to Beverly Hills to L'Ermitage, and they said, okay, you're going to go to the top floor and you're going to meet Rev, and he's going to decide whether you're good or not. And so he comes out of the hallway dressed fully in Adidas, you know, just the full Adidas tuxedo. And he goes, who's the greatest rapper of all time? And I said, Humpty Hump, right? And there's this long pause where he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, did the joke land? Like, what is it? He goes, yeah, Shock G's a really good friend of mine. He is a good rapper. Come in. So once I went in, I met his wife, Justine, and we clicked. He thinks Humpty Hump's the best rapper of all time. And, you know, he had a feeling about that. So,
How do you go about being a dialogue coach, and how do you audition for a dialogue coach? What is it you do?
Look,
what is
nobody wants to hire a dialogue coach.
What is it?
Okay, so basically what you're doing, in multicam, it's called a dialogue coach. In single cam and in movies, it's an acting coach. Okay. Sometimes it's a dialect coach, like if you're really trying to work with dialects, which I do as well, but that's not what I'm in it for. I'm mostly in it for what I would call pure expression. What is someone's best comedic delivery, and why? And do they know why? If they're a younger actor, they may not know why they got a huge laugh on that, but I might know why. And so I might be like, okay, this vowel sounds really good on you, right? So,
Wow.
Right. Like for you, fricatives sound really good. Fuck this. Fuck it. It's great. If I was writing for you, or if I had a script that we were working on together, that's where I would live. I would be like, those things would not hang you up. But if you had to say things about, let's do vowel sounds, love, earth, you know, those kinds of things, they might not sound that great coming
Things
out.
that you know nothing about.
Right, there you go. See, there you have
Love, earth, I know about earth, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I know about love. Don't tell me I don't know about love.
Earth. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Those kinds of sense. So that's your pure expression. And so I would be modulating that based on whatever was on the script. So really, it's an acting coach, but it's a tender subject for a lot of people. So
Oh, so they just really, it's a euphemism, so they don't insult the actors?
and also,
Like, why should I listen to this prick?
correct.
Whereas a dialogue coach, you
Maybe. Like I said, no one wants to hire you in the job, and mostly the actors don't want to work with a dialogue coach. That's been my experience. And then slowly, I'll just prove to them that I only have their best interest in mind. And then once that trust is there, then we're golden, you know.
How'd you get to know Mayim and Melissa?
I got to know Mayim because I had done a lot of shows with Kelly Lee, and Kelly said she had a show coming up. This was before COVID. And I was over at CBS on a show called Broke, and we knew we weren't coming back. And I was looking for a place, and Kelly said, hey, you know, Mayim doesn't want a dialogue coach. She doesn't need a dialogue coach. I'm trying to get you over here, but getting it approved is going to be very difficult. And so she worked on it for a couple of weeks, and I got another phone call, and she said, it doesn't sound like it's going to go. You know, she doesn't want one. And I said, just mention that I speak a little Yiddish. Just put that out there. Just throw it out there, you know. And I thought that would never work. But then all of a sudden there was some interest there. And so when I popped over there, we clicked, you know. So none of the network executives actually speak any Yiddish. So if she and I were having issues with something and there was a mic right in our face, we might revert to a little clandestine.
the Yiddish.
A little Yiddish.
That's pretty cool. Why the Yiddish?
Because, so I fell in love with the Yiddish theater when I moved out here. And so my Yiddish theater teacher, I was her last student. She used to be like the principal of all the Kinderschule in Los Angeles from the early 70s all the way through basically 2000. I was her last student. She was 95 when she passed just a couple years ago. And so we just really clicked. And she said, do you know anything about Yiddish theater? I said, I don't know very much about it. She said, but you love sitcoms. I said, yeah. And she said, all the DNA of sitcoms is Yiddish theater. I thought, okay, that's interesting. I understand the vaudeville connection. I can draw that line pretty quickly. I can draw stand-up all the way there, but I'm not so sure about the Yiddish thing. So she actually educated me in Yiddish theater, and she started to read to me from one of her Yiddish plays, but I understood what she was saying. I said, wait a second, I understand what you're saying. She said, you speak German? And I said, yeah, I took German in high school and in college. And she said, oh, well, Yiddish is, 75% German. So she started to teach me Yiddish. And so I started to convert my German into Yiddish. And then when I met Mayim was like, yeah, but you're illiterate. You need to actually learn the Hebrew. And so then she told me to get Duolingo. So I got Duolingo and I started to learn how to actually like write it and read it. So I knew why I was saying what I was saying.
It's remarkable to me, like the things that moved your career forward. I mean, it's so serendipitous.
It is, yeah.
Scardino coming in as a director,
Correct.
I mean, and then being in his high school play. I mean, perspective-wise, now, bear with me a second. I'm a fireman, right? If I walk into a classroom, I'm looking at the exits, I'm looking at the sprinklers, I'm looking at something totally different than a teacher would. A teacher's like, where should I put my desk? Where should I put this? It's perspective. As a guy, off the street who's not in the business, I walk in to see a play, I'm looking at the actors, I'm looking at the dialogue, but I'm not thinking about the director or the producer. As a producer, would you have that attitude? Like, this play is really well directed? Would you look at something like that? Would that hit you?
Of course.
Yeah, I'm just, because you're in the business.
And also, I'd look for the exit so I know when they get out if the play sucked.
Oh, God.
But I mean, it's remarkable to me that he just happened to be there 3 times he had to tell you.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't believe that it was really happening. And I think in some ways I felt like it didn't work out the way I had thought I wanted it to work out. And so maybe I was where I was supposed to be. My heart still I've always wanted to do sitcom. I always wanted to do television.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. Oftentimes when a director comes in and he's trained in stage, he doesn't know where the fuck to put the cameras.
Right.
So how did you learn where to put the cameras?
Okay, so mostly from Don. Okay, because Don said, you can move. He said, I already know you can move people around. He said, the key now is to move the cameras around. And he said, remember, if you have a live audience, moving the cameras is just as much for them as it is for getting the shot. And I'd never considered that. He said, people want to come see these things and watch these cameras move around, especially if it's 4 dollies, you know, as opposed to 4 peds or whatever. It's more fun. You've got these people riding on the back of the horse. You've got people pulling focus and things like that. It's a war zone in a way. It's this live event, right? It's like a boxing match. It's insane in there. But he said you want to move them for both. So he started to kind of break my brain apart as to why you would do certain kinds of coverage. And then he taught me old school tricks, because I said, you know, I like the way the old sitcoms work. And he said, oh, well, you know, that was 3 cameras instead of 4. And I said, well, let's talk to me. What are we really talking about? Well, say if you've got 3 cameras here, you're never going to single this person up. They're always going to play in a 2-shot. You'll have to do a whole other pass to get them in a single. It's like, you need to think about that. So he's the one that really started to kind of stretch my brain out around it. And then I had the great fortune of working with Victor Gonzalez, who came up on camera. And Victor's a great camera operator and a great director, but he understands it visually.
By the way, you know who gave Victor his first directing
It's got to
job?
be you. Was it on Lopez or?
No, I think it was on For Your Love.
It was on For Your Love, right.
So Victor was a camera operator. Then I made him a technical director, and then I upped him to director.
It's an amazing thing too, because that path is even, I think, more difficult than the path that I'm, like you said, I'm on a serendipitous path to a large degree. I have a passion for it and I have a skill set, but mine is based a lot on things working out. With anyone that wants to come from camera and end up as a director in sitcom, that's a tough path.
It's much harder because you know where to put the cameras, but you don't know where the jokes are.
Correct.
Basically. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but you don't have as good a feeling where the jokes are. You know where the jokes are, but the way you transition, you may not know where to put the cameras.
Right, exactly. So Victor had that skill set. He could talk to actors, he could do it all, and he didn't really need me as a dialogue coach on the show that I think I got shoehorned into that show, and he didn't like me at first, but he was my first friend.
Why would he? Why would he?
Oh God, it's the same thing.
Now I realize why you started the conversation when I used to get your ass kicked in school.
Exactly.
What is the first impression of your people don't like you? I don't know why.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Like a guy.
So I learned a lot from. So I would say that my style is the precursor to it is definitely Don and Victor. And then beyond that, it was really going back and watching everything that I'd watched as a kid and sort of dissecting why were they using these kinds of shots. And I prefer the older style. If it was shot between 77 and 94, to me, that's what I want my shows to look
because those guys were directors.
Correct, right.
Not like we have now.
Yeah, it's interesting now because a lot of times you have folks who actually have no idea where to put the camera or how to talk to the actors, but there's other department heads that, you know, the dialogue coach can go in and get you that performance. Your associate director can go in and get you the coverage. So directors are protected in a way where they don't necessarily have to know as much anymore. And the product that they would make is not so different from the product that I would make. I don't think the audience is that discerning when it comes to sitcom.
Let me ask Frank a question here in regards to this. Like when you look at the old directors like Howard Storm and Joel Zwick or whatever, do you, if a guy comes in, like say I'm a director, right? And I don't know shit, and I walk in, and obviously I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. You spot that right away, right? Obviously, you spot the guy's an asshole.
Correct. You
could fire him on the spot. You get rid of him, or
no, because the executive producer hired him.
Right. So
I can't fire him. I can make a case why we shouldn't rehire him, but you know, directors today, they're more worried about their next job than they are worried about the job they're on now. So they want to be liked. Back in the old days, they didn't care about their next job. They just wanted to do as good a job as they could on the show, make the show as good as possible. And that's how the Howard Storms and the Howard Morrises and the Barnet Kellmans and the, you know, Jimmy Burrows, that's how they got by. And they said, if you don't like me, fire me, but I'm going to do it for the most part my way. Now, you know, anything the executive producer wants, the director does primarily because they want to get a reference for the next job and they want to be rehired. So that's a problem I have with directors today.
Well, and in my situation, all of my opportunities have been on shows I've already been a dialogue coach on. So I don't have any opportunity to not do a great job. You see, because the following week, when another director is there, I'm the dialogue coach again. So it needs every episode that I do has to be the best episode I've ever done. And that's something that I intend on taking with me every show that I go on. But at the moment, all of my jobs are predicated by the fact that I'm a dialogue coach.
So your whole life basically prepared you to be a dialogue coach.
Correct.
So you felt very comfortable doing that.
Actually, I would say his whole life prepared him to be a director.
But that's what I was going to ask him next. So when you became a director and you slid into that niche, all of a sudden you found out, wait a minute, dialogue coach is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to do.
What I realize is that they're the same job. What I do as a director of a sitcom is exactly the same thing that I would do as a high school theater teacher. I didn't change anything about it. There's a different skill set in terms of the technical aspect of it that I'm allowed to play with when I'm a director. But otherwise, my approach to it is exactly the same. It doesn't change. It hasn't changed at all. I haven't changed anything that I've been doing. I'm just, it seems to work out, so I just keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah, and we've got the directors protected. Not that Ren needs a director, needs to protecting, but some of the directors do need protection.
Right.
And we've got a great camera coordinator named Roger Christensen.
Yes.
And Roger has directed many episodes of Friends, etc. But he's an old white guy. So nobody's hiring old white guys to direct anymore. So Roger is an extremely capable director who's great on cameras.
Roger is, for me, so picking up from, I started with Don and Victor, and then when Victor left Broke, it was me and Roger. And that's an interesting story. I think you'll appreciate this. When I was out there busting my ass trying to be an actor, I was getting some traction with these multicam shows, and that's where I wanted to be. And so I got an audition, a huge audition for Hannah Montana. I thought, I was playing this tennis instructor, Guillermo. I'm not a Guillermo. I think we all know that I'm not a Guillermo. But I went out for the part, and I knocked it out of the park. And so I got the call back, and then I got another call back and another call back, and it's just me and the other guy. Well, the other guy gets it, right? And it's a huge letdown for me. And the agent drops me pretty soon after that. They're like, Ren, you can get in the room, but you can't book it. They called me the Avail King. Being on Avail means you're available for the part when they cast you for it. So being on Avail means it's you and the other guy. I went on Avail 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow.
Couldn't book anything. For 3 years, I'm doing this. All right, so they drop me, and I flash forward, I end up at Broke, and Roger keeps saying, you look familiar. Have I seen you anything? You're an actor? I said, it didn't really work out for me. I want to be a director. He said, your face looks familiar. I said, you're thinking of Andrew Garfield. You're thinking of Topher Grace. You think somebody else looks like me. So Victor leaves Broke. Roger and I are having lunch one day in New York Street on Radford, on the Radford lot. And he asks me sort of why I don't act. And I told him the story. I crapped out on Hannah Montana. I was so close. I was going to bring joy and pride to my family back south. But I took a shit on it, and so it's over. And he goes, that's where I know you from. I'm the guy that told you no.
Oh, wow. How about that shit?
Right. I went, what? And he's a Buddhist, He goes, you're right where you're supposed to be, Ren. You're right where you're supposed to be. And I'm like, do I strangle this man? It's just me and him on New York. No one would ever know. I could leave him here. And so then we just really kind of fell into each other. And then he took me under his wing. And so much of what I would say my camera style now is based almost entirely on what Roger does. Because Roger can make 4 peds look like 4 dollies. It's just the way the camera moves and how it accepts actors into the shot and how it forces the cut, which directors aren't necessarily allowed to do anymore, but you can force the cut based on the coverage that you're getting. And you can make the jokes funnier based on how the cut looks, how it plays. And I learned that from Roger. He's brilliant. Absolutely like a huge mentor for me.
So, I mean, the jokes are being told, whether you zoom in close, whether you want to touch this guy's face, because this guy's got a very animated face or whatever.
Right.
Quick question to you, Frank, again. The camera coordinator, you said, like the old white guy, if he wasn't an old white guy, would a camera coordinator have the balls to tell a director,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, he would.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's like a standard procedure.
If he or she is worth his or her weight and salt.
Yeah.
Worth and salt. Weight and salt. They were.
Tell the director, you're getting this wrong. I would do it this way. Really?
And the director may take that information or they may not. I've seen directors say no to great camera coordinators and then end up regretting it. Or I end up regretting it for them because I know that we didn't get this performance in this shot because they didn't put it in a 2-shot. They put it in a single. So now that performance over there is lost. Or I have to cut to it, which is a different
Yeah, and basically you have four cameras. You have A camera, B camera, C camera, and X camera, which is the fourth camera because they call it X because D sounded too much like B. So there will be confusion. And basically, A and X are wide cameras, and B and C are masters. So, in Joel Zwick says, single over master. And that's the way you direct. And,
Right.
You have to keep the cameras moving and try not to do any resets.
Right.
That's the trick. And that's the key to sitcom directing. I think actually it's easier to direct single camera
Yes.
than it is to direct multiple camera because you have to be aware of four cameras and what they're doing at every moment. In single camera, coverage on Ren, shoot Ren's coverage. Coverage on me and Billy, shoot our coverage. So coverage on Derek, shoot Derek's coverage. So it's
amazing.
easier.
It's amazing to me as a civilian, let's call it civilian, that a camera coordinator has that much clout, and that we don't even never heard of him. Like it's almost
They're the through line, though. I mean, for if you have 22 episodes in a season, they're the one that's probably going to be there all 22 of those episodes. So the visual component of the show, they're the through line.
Yes, when I was in New York, Roger had been my camera coordinator forever out here. I wanted Roger in New York to be my camera coordinator. So he moved to New York and he was my camera coordinator. I hired camera coordinators way before we hired the directors because I wanted to make sure we got the shots. And that's all the camera coordinator does is make sure you got the shots. If you're doing Candice Bergen, you want to make sure that every joke Candice delivers is in a single. Now, in one camera. So it'd be either A camera or X camera. But if you've got a master, get her in a master too. But in a lot of times, they don't. Well, they usually get singles. But if the network wants a single and you don't have a single, that's not good for the director.
Right.
So.
Right. And on the other side of that too, now with younger actors, the newer generation, not very many of them came up through theater or on stage. So they don't necessarily know how to play to those four cameras. So a lot of times they don't even know what their coverage is. So you have a pro like Candice, you can say to someone like that, you can say, okay, we've got your single here. You're protected on X. We've got you. Don't worry about that. If you mess that line up, I got you over here. I can cut over here. And they get it. She's a pro, so she gets it. Larroquette, same thing. When I was directing him, I said, John, I want you to move upstage and over. And he goes, I would never move over there. And I said, great. So you'll just block Melissa's camera. That's fine. And then he went, oh, okay. He's asking me to do it mechanically rather than in character because I wanted to get that coverage live. I didn't want to have to do it in a second pass, basically. So he cleared the camera for me so that I could get it. The newer, younger actors, they don't have a sense of it. So a lot of times, if the director can't do it or doesn't have the language to get that performance, and if the actor doesn't know what they're talking about, and even worse, if you have writers who don't know how to read a quad, which you see more and more these days, then it can fall apart really quickly. And so, I don't know, part of my job as a dialogue coach is to be part of the triage of, no, we have that shot. We have it on B camera. I saw it. I wrote it down. Great performance on B, second pass. But it requires more work from all of us because the genre is starting to slip through our fingers a little bit. For me, the American sitcom is as pure an art form as jazz. It's an American art form. What was created here, we've built it out. You can connect to a much wider audience with a sitcom. Think about what All in the Family did. I mean, even Seinfeld for just being like nihilistic and different than any other sitcoms. Think about what Friends did. These are huge opportunities to connect with the wide audience. So I don't like the idea that the art form is starting to kind of slip a little bit. So I feel like I'm part of the vanguard of people just trying to hold it together and say, no, this is an essential product of Hollywood. It's not an Orson Welles picture. It's simpler than that, but it has much deeper meaning than that a lot of times. And we all can remember episodes of Taxi or Cheers or whatever that at the end of the episode you went, that was heavy, that was deep, that's what they went through. You don't see that so much anymore. It's lighter. Everything's lighter, you know.
You know, I got to ask you, because you talked about 12 Angry Men in the round.
Yeah.
What in the world possessed you to think that actually, when I'm thinking about it, I mean, it takes place in one room,
Right.
the whole play.
Right.
It never leaves that room. It's
Right.
the jury room. So in the round, I would never think that would be pliable, but it makes sense.
It makes sense because the audience can move. These people are stuck in their chairs for the most part. I have them getting up, smoking a cigarette, opening up a window that's it's just hanging from the ceiling. Basically, the window opens up. They can smoke a cigarette, blow it through. The audience can go behind that window, see through that, give them the experience of watching these people baking in this room. But the reason I did it was because it was difficult. And that's the other part of me is like, yes, I meet people and a lot of times instantly they don't like my positivity or they think it's a put on or whatever. But the other thing is I like challenges.
That's what I thought it was. I thought it was a put on.
Right.
Year one.
Right. But it's just there. I mean, this is what you see is what you get, you know. But I don't like things to be easy. If it's not complicated, I'm probably not interested in doing it.
We choose to go to the moon.
In this decade.
Not because it's easy.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just that. I think that I get that from my parents. My parents were hard scrabble. They came up and found each other and kind of created this sort of Brady Bunch family that we have. And I watched my parents go from like nothing to almost middle class to my dad becoming vice president over at Bell South, which is now AT&T. My mom, you know, being just independent in every kind of way you could possibly imagine. To become a woman on the police force in the 80s.
And then a PI.
And then to like fall in love with like a blood banking and working for the American Red Cross. And then their retirement job, because they haven't retired yet. They're in their 70s. They'll never retire. They bought a restaurant, you know, 15, 16 years ago. They bought a restaurant and have like taken this, which is the oldest restaurant in the town I grew up in. The restaurant I went to as a kid. They've turned it into this community hub. You know, they don't do easy things, you know. And so I think I picked that up from them, for sure.
That's great. What are your aspirations moving forward?
I want to write and direct sitcoms, for sure. I have my own sort of ideas about where we can go with this format. And I want to move in that direction of actually pitching and writing full series. But mostly putting really great characters together. There's basically two formats of belief in the sitcom world, which is it's either character, and both are true, actually. It's not one versus the other, but you'll hear that. It's either interesting characters who are put in an interesting situation, and that's the funny, or it's the location creates the relationships and creates the funny. So the bar and Cheers, you could put any characters in there. Yeah, it's great to have Norm and Cliff and all those guys, but that bar would always be that bar, and interesting people would always find their way downstairs into that bar. And I believe that. All those great guys that played on Taxi, I mean, they're great characters, but if you're going to be driving a taxi in 1979 New York, that's going to, no matter who comes in that door, they're going to be interesting. So both are true. And so one of the things I love about Night Court is it falls into that category. Crazy shit is going to happen in that court, no matter what night of the week you go on. So we can believe that. What I want to do is jam those two things together and get kind of an extended family kind of comedy inside of a really great location. See what happens if you can jam those two together. They certainly did it on Mary Tyler Moore. You know.
Yeah, The Office.
And The Office, but yeah, exactly.
Wow, pretty cool stuff, man. You're more comfortable being a director than do you find like this is where I landed, this is where I'm supposed to be, this is it?
Yeah, it's very strange. I'm not nervous at all doing it. It's high pressure, high stakes. Any mistake that I make means I might not ever work again, right? And so those mistakes, they could also just be problems that have nothing to do with me. It could be that there's an issue between cast members. It could be that a line came out that an actor really doesn't want to say and is offended by, and will be offended by for years to come. You know, because we all make fun of each other on sitcoms, but you have to make some joke about the way you look or whatever it is, they might take it personally.
You know, you talk about you may never work again. Victor Gonzalez, who works all the time, did one Call Me Cat.
Right.
And he never came back.
Right.
because he had the worst piece of shit script.
It was not good.
It was not good, and it was poorly written. It was poorly executed in the writing, and Victor took the blame for it.
He took the blame for it, but also he actually turned that into a show that worked. We had to do reshoots on it, all this,
Yeah.
but visually and the acting, and actually, when I go back to the first season of that show, that's one of the funniest episodes there is. It's because Victor was there piecing it together, but he took the blame for it.
He took the blame for it.
And he turned the show into a hit. I mean,
No,
you lost me there.
No,
He took that.
he turned the show into something that was airable
Exactly.
because
it was that bad.
The script was awful.
It was rewritten. I think we did 2 sets of reshoots on it, which were pretty significant reshoots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But the whole time he was doing it, I was in awe of him because I was like, wow, I'm watching you take what's not a great episode that's been rewritten and now no longer makes sense from what we already shot. Now I have to go back and reshoot all these little bits to make it work. He tracked it and put it together and polished it and turned it in. And I thought,
yeah, he made it passable, and he took the blame for it.
right.
And he's but he's Victor Gonzalez, so he's got a career, and he's doing great.
Nobody's going to have to run a racket for him.
No,
anytime soon. He's doing okay.
Every week of the year he's working. I mean, he's a master at it. He's an absolute master.
When you do a drama like 12 Angry Men, do you learn a lot about sitcom? Is it just another form of directing? Is it? Do you feel like you're out of your element?
They're the same to me. Drama and comedy are exactly the same to me. Now, many people will disagree with this, but that's how I feel about it. Drama, comedy is really about rhythm and delivery. Rhythm, timing, and delivery. Rhythm and timing, kind of the same thing. But somebody's funny rhythms, it's why Christopher Walken, for example, can be hilarious, but he can also be really, really serious. He's got an interesting rhythm, right? So comedy is really about rhythm. Drama is really about breath and space. So in dramas, you see people a lot of times, they're exhaling. Stuff like that, right? Those little kinds of things, that's what makes it drama. It's not because the lines are sad. It's based on what the human is doing. Is it a speech rhythm thing? Comedy. Is it breath? Is it someone who you can see it on their face? They want to say a word, but maybe they don't. Drama.
So drama's more internal.
Correct.
What's harder to do?
Comedy.
Why?
Because keeping anything funny all the time, it's a fool's errand. And that's why I like it. You're chasing something that's already escaped you.
That's fantastic.
But you're also being chased by the Indiana Jones boulder. You're going to get crushed doing it. And probably whatever you make that's funny now will not be funny in 10 years.
I did comedy, when I first got out of college. And I got out of college I was 66 years old when I graduated college. I went to college at 62 and graduated.
That's amazing.
At 66.
I thought you went to college at 58 and graduated at 62.
Years and years. They go something like that anyway. 61, 64, because my friend used to tell me that, Billy, you live 3 blocks from everywhere. Every time I ask you how far, it's about 3 blocks. 3 blocks. He goes, you live 3 blocks from everywhere. But I went to school late and I started doing comedy, doing stand-up just because I was retired. I figured, fuck it, I always wanted to give it a shot. And the timing and all that stuff, I get it, without a doubt. I mean, it's the timing. But I also don't get how, I never thought about drama being internal like that, where it's just breathing or just, I always thought it was the dialogue that dictated whether it was funny.
The dialogue in a drama often is what ruins a drama, because we want to see you on camera breathing and experiencing whatever that person's saying, or what horrible thing you've seen. I'm thinking Sopranos, I'm thinking, Breaking Bad. We want to see on your face what you've seen. If you say words like, man, that was really fucked up, or that really screwed me up, the words are going to undo the look most of the time. And if it's really brilliant writing, then it'll just fall right out of your mouth. It will be effortless. But drama's just, this is why so many comedians make great dramatic actors. It's the same thing. That's the big secret in Hollywood. Everyone thinks, oh, you can do one or the other. If you can do comedy, you can do anything.
Oh, I buy that. I think when you were talking before about trying to be funny all the time, you get a guy like Robin Williams who's always on, who you knew, Robin, but he's always on. And there's a thin line between genius and insanity. And if you're walking that tightrope, you could go either way.
Right, absolutely.
And so, I think chasing comedy all the time, they're trying to be funny all the time. Like you said, it's a fool's errand.
It's a fool's errand, yeah. But there's something attractive about it, because when you get those laughs, You know, it's one thing when someone said, "Wow, your performance really made me cry." I'm like, "Oh, wow, I don't know how to respond to that." But you get a laugh. It's probably the most addictive drug.
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
it's
you would know.
Yeah, it's without a doubt. If you got and the odd thing about it is, if you're doing comedy, especially stand up, the more people in the room, the easier it is to do.
Exactly.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Would you rather get a big laugh or have a glass of Johnny Walker?
Wow.
Johnny Walker Black was like mother's milk to me. I drank so much of that shit. If I ever put it all together in a room, we all drown. I think the high, the rush is the laugh. You know, I mean, if you're getting that kind of a laugh, and it's amazing when you're doing stand up. If there's 600 people and you got a 45-minute set, you're only going to do 30 minutes because the laughs are going to take up the other 15 minutes, hopefully.
Hopefully.
And when you give the punchline, the laugh goes up all the way to the roof and then comes all the way back down again. So you got to wait for the timing.
Yep.
So the laugh dies. So the time, it just takes longer. You got 10 or 15 people in the fucking room.
Right.
That's a whole different ball. That's where a guy like Rickles, your buddy Don, would kill because he makes everybody part of the show.
Right.
I can't do that. I'm not good at crowd work. It's like I got a routine. I'm a writer. I think I'm a writer, so I write the routine, memorize the routine, then put it in my own words, and so I can, flow with it a little bit, But to do 8, 9 people, I always sucked at that. Because you've got to make like you're really interested in these fucking people.
And you're not.
I don't give a fuck about these people.
That's where I would start, though. I would say if you've got 8 or 9 people, tell them, I don't do crowd work. I'm not interested in any of you. And then,
that's
good.
That's
go from the other angle. That way you get both.
I got a Fiat outside. I could take everybody home at the end of the night. They get the whole room. If they go right home, no worries. We got 5 people in. It's like, but yeah, it's really hard to do comedy with that, unless you're a guy like Rickles. You told me about the time. One time that on the Rickles show that something went wrong with the production. Rickles just went out and did an hour and entertained the whole crowd.
Yeah, Richard Lewis basically had an anxiety attack, but we thought he had a heart attack.
Wow.
So about an hour before the show, the audience was there, and Richard had to go to the hospital because he thought he was having a heart attack. So we had to cancel the show, but the audience was already there. Don came out and did an hour, and everybody left happier.
Oh, without a doubt.
By seeing Don's show than they would have had they seen Daddy Dearest.
And they saw something that they're not supposed to see.
Right.
That's always a home run.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
That's always like if you see something. That's why crowd work is so good, so effective.
Right.
Because the people in the room know that what they're seeing there, if it's crowd work and it hits, that he doesn't do that every night. And they're seeing something special.
And it's real.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's real, but it's real, but it's not real.
Right.
Because
like
when you're a guy like Don, you got
so many.
You got 10 things for every guy.
Right.
Every situation.
And even guys that are not near as talented as Don Rickles. I mean, and there aren't too many that ever were. But I mean, even guys like that, it's like a magician. They can talk you into where they want to go, whatever angle they want to take you into.
Yep.
And then they got a couple of prepared jokes for it,
Derek, you got any questions?
I got a couple questions. Yeah.
6.5 inches, Derek.
Is that true? Is that true? That's pretty good.
It's not true. What the fuck? You ain't going to check.
That's the rumor. That's the rumor.
Check right now. So you mentioned some of your mentors and directors. I want to know what if you could give sort of like a philosophy of directing, particularly from the people that you were interested in. What would you say would be? You mentioned something like make sure that director gets out of the way.
Right.
What sort of philosophies could you impart?
In this format, it's all about the words. So
Okay.
if you do anything that's going to get in the way of the words, you're toast as a director. You have to protect the words first. So, and anyone that comes up through the theater, we sort of worship our writers. You don't see a lot of people wanting to change Eugene O'Neill. Nobody necessarily wants to suffer through 3 hours of Long Day's Journey, but also nobody really wants to touch it either. There's a respect for the writers in the theater that you don't necessarily see in Hollywood motion pictures, for example. Once you buy a script for movies, get that writer out of there so that you can rewrite it and unwrite it and do all the things you want to do. But for a sitcom, you got to worship the writer first. And so whatever you can do to protect the words. Now, the second step of that is now the actors have to embody those words, right? And it has to feel organic to them. And sometimes, if it's in the first season, the character that they're building is equally being constructed by the writers. And those two things don't always go smoothly. And so you have to be available to smooth things out for these actors. Sometimes, I mean, I've pissed a lot of people off because I change words. I'll change a word here or there. I'll make an and a but. I've been thrown off a set for changing a single word, but I got the performance they were looking for, and they said, okay, you can come back. So I'd say, I wouldn't say follow my direction in that way, but I would say serve the words and then do everything that you can to help the actors feel as organic as they can feel delivering those words. And then you have to stage it and you have to shoot it, but everything you're doing is to protect the words and then secondarily their performance of those words.
Got it. That
Yeah.
sounds great. Okay, so the guy who fired you, didn't select you for Hannah Montana.
Oh yeah, Roger. Yeah.
Did you ever ask him why?
Yeah, I mean, he just said you weren't the guy.
That's it. He didn't.
And he's Buddhist, so he said, the universe places you where you're supposed to be. He said, you're supposed to be a dialogue coach on this show with me right now. And that was 5 years ago. So when that show ended, we went our separate ways. In this business, we all know each other. There's only really 20 camera operators. There's a dozen associate directors. There's maybe 8 dialogue coaches. There's
Wow.
What would you say, like 12 really great directors who are being rotated in and out? Maybe a dozen.
12. Who are the other 10?
Okay, got it. Yeah, right.
Wow.
But that's the thing is like there are 15 script supervisors. Like we all know each other. We all know who. So once I said goodbye to Roger, I didn't know when I'd ever see him again. So when we ended up together at Night Court, that to me was really kismet. I really adore Roger and I trust his artistry. And so I was fortunately able, on my first episode of Night Court, he was the camera coordinator for it. So we sat down and just talked about, what would they do on the old Night Court? What kind of cool camera moves can we use that are from the 80s that they don't use anymore? And he was game to resurrect that style and make it work. So it was really a fun collaboration.
Skills, talents. What other skills outside of directing? What other skills or talents do you have? I know you mentioned, so we need to get the Yiddish. We need to get that.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Yeah, sure. What else can I do, or what else do you need to be able to do to be a director? Because the answer.
No. I want to know about you personally. So, what can you play basketball? You're a chess player.
You would never pick me to be on a sports team at all. Okay, but I could be a life coach to any of those players. All right, they had issues in their lives, and you didn't see it on the. You said, "Oh, there's something's going on. They don't have that layup anymore." If you give me lunch with them, a couple hours with them, they'll get the layup.
Okay, let me ask you another question. How the hell did you get your wife?
Luck.
Drop your pants.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, right. Exactly. There you go. I just need to take a look. Just take out enough to win. I know where you read that. Right, exactly. I didn't answer your question yet, Derek, but I will. Okay. So Angela and I went to grad school together. She is a writer, and so she was in critical studies, but she had started out in the theater program, and she was like, no, this is not for me. But I was doing a one-man show of an E.E. Cummings piece, a short piece, and it was very experimental, and I was playing all the characters, and really, I would say probably like a very violent one-man show is probably what it looked like. And nobody was interested in me doing this. They were like, no, you're going to make a fool of yourself. This is a bad idea, Ren. And I said, but I came all the way out here. I'm still paying this loan off. I came all the way out here to get this master's degree. If I can't break through what's holding me back, how will I ever do it? If I can't do it here, how am I going to do it in Hollywood? How's it going to happen? And I did this performance, and that's where she fell for me. She was like, she saw that I was fearless. When it comes to art, I will be absolutely fearless. And I think that's where she decided that I was worthy-ish.
E. Cummings Cummings writings are usually like short.
Mm-hmm.
How long was a one-man show? What'd you do it? 40 minutes?
Oh, even less. I think it was 11 minutes. Yeah. So it was called I, Death, and Santa Claus. So it's a cubist play. So it's written in the late 30s. So the way that it was even structured, again, this is Cal Arts, so it's experimental theater. So I had to figure out a way to take this beautiful thing that's, on the page sort of here and there and turn it into an actual play. And so that was a great challenge for me as well. So I'm directing myself and doing that. But she saw it. She just said, once I saw that play, she said, I saw that you were capable of anything. And so I knew at that point, I was like, I think my job is to be a director, but I didn't know how to do it. And so this entire journey, Angela's been like, you should do this, don't do that. Or if it's at the end of the day, I'm like, Frank Pace doesn't like me. I'm like, this guy's going to make or break my career. The guy doesn't like me. What am I going to do? And she's like, you'll prove it. You'll prove it.
He gets a terrific girl because he's capable of anything. My first wife left me because she said I was capable of anything. you fucking capable of anything.
It goes both ways.
So different.
It goes both ways.
You got any final questions, Billy?
No, just a delight to meet you, man.
Hey, what a pleasure.
You'll always be Billy Ren to me.
I appreciate that.
That's it, Billy Ren. I mean, I'll always remember you as Billy Ren because my partner.
Is that your name, Billy Ren?
It's Ren William, but growing up in the South, you got to have a nickname. So it was, as a kid, it was Billy Ren. Now it's California Ren. My dad is also Ren, and he's very popular in the South.
Where does Ren come from?
So my dad's name is Warren, but his mom called him Ren for short, and she passed when she was very young. And so when I was born very sick, and so they thought, oh, okay, well, we'll give him an
Essen and Yesenia.
We'll give.
Oh yeah, the same, huh?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm just saying, his wife and his daughter and his son are named after variations of his wife's name.
Wow.
Yes.
Did I explain that correctly?
Yes. Both my kids' names come from my wife's name, basically.
Wow.
I have one more question.
Okay.
Actually, two more questions. You mentioned you sort of like asked him about his wish list. So what would he like to do? And you mentioned that, so people can reference that in the interview. But I would say I would like to know, Frank as a mentor on this show, if you were to give him advice, and I know you don't like to do this because you're sort of like Zen and Buddhist in your way in terms of people taking their paths, but I'd like for you to give him some advice on how he can get whatever dreams he has of being in the industry. How can he make that happen as quickly as possible?
I don't understand the question.
Don't repeat it.
I don't understand the question, but if you do, go ahead and be very careful.
Isn't he supposed to give me advice?
Yeah.
Oh, me giving him advice?
Can you give him advice on how to accomplish everything that he wants to accomplish in the industry, including his dream projects?
Get lucky.
Yeah.
It's always luck.
Yeah. Well, there's so much luck.
Get lucky.
It's always luck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't answer your question. I mean, in terms of my skill set, it's writing, acting, directing. That's the skill set.
Okay.
But mostly what I'm able to do is look at something you've written and say, this is great. The punchline that you're looking for is in the middle of your scene. You need to make this the punchline, and then you need to write to that. Okay. As an actor, I can sit back and say, or if I'm your scene partner and there's something that's not working, I will change my performance to get your performance where I think it should be. As a director, I'm going to make sure the camera gets exactly your performance the way it needs to happen. So all of my skill sets go back to me being a coach. It's a very simple line. It just goes back. And so my job is to not fight that, and to just every set that I walk onto know that there's a reason that I'm there. I may not know what that reason is, but it'll become clear.
Got it. Okay. Frank's not playing ball today, so.
But I will say, I'm going to add one thing just because, since you're a former firefighter. So in 1988, our house burned down. Okay, it was and that's a part of my origin story too that I don't tell very much. But we lost everything, and my mom was a cop, so it was a small town, so we knew all the firefighters, we knew everything. But losing everything in that fire, it affected all of us very differently. For me, it allowed me to sort of like recreate who I wanted to be in the world, because I didn't have anything tangible that belonged. All the toys were melted. I mean, we went into the site after it. I mean, all the way to the ground. So it freed me up from material things, like it's attachment in that sort of way. Like what I'm looking for is human moments, like even if they're funny, if they're dramatic, whatever it is. But I'm looking for human things that only exist in that moment because of that fire. So I think that my psychology was definitely twisted by it. But you know. Yeah.
Surround and drown, we call that. They say, surround and drown. They don't go into the South. They save the foundation.
Right.
You know, right. Like we go in and push the fire out the window. We do it different because properties values are so high.
Right.
and our lives ain't as important as the property
Oh,
value.
God. Oh my God.
You're a beauty.
30,000 a year. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
What is it? $1,000 a square foot they rent for New York? I don't know.
Well, thank you so much, Ren.
Yeah,
Hey, thank you for having me.
You're even much more substantial a person than I thought.
Great.
You got a low bar, man.
Yeah. Apparently. No, thanks for having me. This has been really inspiring.
That's great. And with that,
Ren, can you sign us off in Yiddish?
yeah, sign us up in Yiddish.
What would you like me to say?
Say,
How about this? Bissl lib. A bissl lib. This is a piece of love here. This is a piece of love. So I wish you, ich wünsch dich a bissl lib.
Nice.
that's what I was thinking he was going to say. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for looking at. We appreciate it. Read Lamar's Gamble, will you, if you get a chance. Take it easy. Take it easy. Take it easy.
Take it easy.
Next week's guest, actor, comedian Tom Arnold.